First contact and challenge. High Admiral Zexthar of the Kralaxian Empire stood at the helm of the Invincible Might, his massive frame casting an imposing shadow across the bridge. The crystalline display before him showed a seemingly unremarkable planet, Earth. His four arms crossed in contemplation as his ridge-lined face contorted into what passed for a smile among his species. "So this is the world that's been causing such a stir in the galactic community," he rumbled, voice deep enough to make the deck plates vibrate. "These humans." The science officer, Venra, manipulated her control sphere with practiced ease. "Yes, Admiral. Despite achieving faster-than-light travel only 30 years ago, they've already established trading posts in 12 star systems." "Trading posts," Zexthar scoffed. "The Kralaxian Empire doesn't build trading posts. We build fortresses. We forge weapons. We create warriors." He flexed his upper arms, the biomechanical augments humming with power. "That is true strength." The Kralaxian Empire had ruled their portion of the galaxy through raw power for 10 millennia. Their warriors were living weapons, augmented from birth with cutting-edge biotechnology. Their smallest recruits could lift tanks, their veterans could wrestle with spacecraft. They were living embodiments of their philosophy, strength above all. "Interesting readings from the surface," Admiral Venra reported. "Their gravity is 1.1 times our standard. Their atmospheric pressure is higher than most civilized worlds. And yet," she paused, rechecking her data, "they appear to have minimal biological augmentation." "Primitive," Zexthar concluded. "Perhaps they need a lesson in true power." He straightened to his full 4-meter height, open a channel to their global defense network. The response came faster than expected. A holographic projection materialized on the bridge. A human woman in a crisp uniform, her dark skin contrasting with silver-streaked hair. "This is Admiral Helena Martins of the Earth Defense Force. Welcome to Sol System." Zexthar didn't bother with diplomatic pleasantries. "I am High Admiral Zexthar of the Kralaxian Empire, master of 1,000 worlds, commander of the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. We have been watching your species' expansion with interest." Martinez's expression remained neutral. "We're aware of the Kralaxian Empire's reputation. How can we help you?" "Help?" Zexthar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "No, Admiral. We're here to help you. Your species is young, unaugmented, weak. Yet you venture into space, claiming territory, establishing presence. This cannot continue without proving your worth." "I see." Martinez's tone cooled several degrees. "And how exactly do you propose we prove our worth?" Zexthar's biomechanical arms whirred as he gestured grandly. "The trial of might. A sacred tradition among truly strong species. 3 challenges of increasing difficulty. If your champion succeeds, you'll have earned your place among the stars. If they fail," he let the threat hang unspoken. "And if we refuse, then we demonstrate our strength less formally." Zexthar's smile showed rows of metallic teeth. "You have 1 planetary rotation to decide. Choose your strongest warrior. No powered armor, no vehicles. Just pure biological and technological strength against our champion." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Venra approached her commander cautiously. "Admiral, our scans show they have impressive military technology." "Perhaps. Their technology is irrelevant," Zexthar interrupted. "This is about strength. Pure, undiluted power. Something their soft, unaugmented bodies cannot possibly possess." He turned to face the blue-green planet below. "Let them scramble to find their champion. Let them realize their inadequacy. Then they will understand their proper place in our galaxy." On Earth, Admiral Martinez sat in the emergency council chamber, surrounded by holographic projections of world leaders and military commanders. The room buzzed with urgent discussion. "They're clearly looking for an excuse to attack," someone argued. "This trial is just a pretense. Our fleet isn't ready for a full-scale war with the Kralaxian Empire." Another voice countered. We need time. Martins raised her hand for silence. What we need, she said firmly, is to think differently. They expect us to send a soldier, someone augmented with whatever crude biotechnology they think we possess. A slight smile crossed her face. So let's surprise them. What do you have in mind? Asked the Secretary General. I recently reviewed a fascinating project at the Advanced Research Division, something that might just redefine what the Kralaxians consider strength. Martinez tapped her datapad, bringing up a personnel file. Get me Dr. Sarah Chen. And someone find out everything we know about Kralaxian biomechanical augmentation. I think it's time we showed our visitors that strength comes in many forms. As the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, casting the defense headquarters in golden light, Martinez couldn't help but smile. The Kralaxians thought they were setting up a demonstration of their superiority. Instead, they might have just given humanity exactly the opportunity it needed to prove something far more important than mere physical strength. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. The unexpected champion. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her lab at the Advanced Research Division, surrounded by holographic displays of Kralaxian physiology. Her small frame and delicate features seemed at odds with the massive biomechanical schematics floating around her. Dark eyes darted between data streams as her fingers danced through the air, manipulating the projections. Fascinating, she muttered, zooming in on a Kralaxian arm augment. They've completely ignored metabolic efficiency in favor of raw power output. It's like building a rocket without considering fuel consumption. Admiral Martinez watched from the doorway, noting how the young scientist seemed completely absorbed in her work. I take it you've reviewed the data package we sent. Chen didn't even look up. Their entire approach to biotechnology is brute force. Maximum power, minimal finesse. They're so focused on strength they've forgotten about efficiency. She paused, finally turning to face Martinez. But you didn't come here just to discuss their technical limitations. No, Martinez confirmed, stepping into the lab. I came to offer you a job. How would you like to save Earth from an interstellar empire? Chen raised an eyebrow. I'm a biomechanical engineer, not a warrior. The Kralaxians demanded a champion for their trial of might. Surely you have military personnel better suited. What we have, Martinez replied, are soldiers who think like soldiers. The Kralaxians expect that. They're prepared for it. What they're not prepared for is you. Because I'm small, unaugmented. Everything they despise. Martinez smiled. Because you understand something they've forgotten. True strength isn't just about power. It's about adaptation, efficiency, and innovation. Your work on biomechanical interface systems proves that. Chen gestured at the holographic displays. My research focuses on optimizing human-machine interaction, not winning strength competitions. The neural interface designs I've been developing are theoretical. But they work, Martinez interrupted. Your simulations show that. And more importantly, they work in ways the Kralaxians haven't considered. Chen fell silent, studying the alien schematics again. After a long moment, she asked, what exactly would these trials involve? Unknown, Martinez admitted. But based on their technology and culture, we can make educated guesses. They'll test raw strength, endurance, and probably combat capability. All things their champion has trained for their entire life. Chen's voice was thoughtful. All things they expect to be approached in exactly one way. Exactly. Martinez stepped closer to the holograms. They're not just testing our strength. They're testing their assumptions about how strength should be used, about what strength even is. Chen waved her hand, dismissing the displays. You know they'll consider any solution I develop to be cheating. Only if it breaks their rules. And from what we've seen, their rules have some interesting gaps. Martinez produced a data crystal. This contains everything we know about their civilian and military technology, their medical databases, their cultural records, looking for weaknesses, looking for opportunities. Martinez set the crystal on a nearby desk. You have 12 hours to decide. If you accept, you'll have 2 weeks to prepare. If not, we'll find another solution." Chen picked up the crystal, turning it over in her hands. 12 hours to decide if I want to risk my life facing an alien warrior 3 times my size. To decide if you want to show the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength isn't in our muscles or our machines, but in how we think. Martinez headed for the door. "Besides, I've read your college thesis on biomechanical leverage systems. I think you've been waiting for a chance like this your entire career." After Martinez left, Chen slotted the crystal into her computer. As data streams filled her screens, a slow smile spread across her face. "They want a demonstration of strength," she murmured, already making notes. "Let's give them a lesson in efficiency instead." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Chen's lab became a fortress of innovation, filled with prototype devices and experimental systems. Her team worked around the clock, testing and refining designs that made the observing military engineers scratch their heads in confusion. "But where are the weapons?" one colonel demanded, watching Chen calibrate what looked like a slim exoskeletal frame. "The armor, the augments." "Right here," Chen replied, not looking up from her work. "Just not in the way you're thinking." The day before the trials, Admiral Martinez visited the lab one final time. She found Chen sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by completed devices that looked more like medical equipment than combat gear. "Are you ready?" Martinez asked. Chen stood, moving with a fluid grace that seemed somehow different from 2 weeks ago. "Ready to redefine strength." She smiled, flexing her fingers as microscopic filaments caught the light. "Absolutely. The Kralaxians are already in orbit. Their champion." Martinez hesitated. "Well, let's just say they're confident." "Good." Chen began packing her equipment into a small case. "That's exactly what we want them to be." "Any last-minute concerns?" Chen closed the case with a decisive click. "Just one. When I win, do you think they'll be more upset that I beat their champion, or that I did it without breaking a sweat?" As they left the lab, Martinez couldn't help but notice that Chen's movement had a new precision to it, as if every gesture was calculated for maximum efficiency. The Kralaxians wanted a display of strength. Instead, they were about to witness something far more impressive: human ingenuity unleashed. High above Earth, aboard the Invincible Might, High Admiral Zexthar reviewed the data on the human champion. His laughter echoed through the bridge. "They send us this. An unaugmented researcher." He turned to his science officer. "Venra, surely this is a mistake." Venra studied her readings. "No mistake, Admiral. Dr. Sarah Chen, biomechanical engineer. No military record. No combat augmentations." "Then tomorrow," Zexthar declared, "we will teach humanity the price of mockery. Prepare the trial chambers. Let us show these humans what true strength means." If he had understood human expressions better, the slight smile on Venra's face might have worried him. She had been studying Dr. Chen's published research, and something about it made her wonder if perhaps the humans weren't mocking them at all. Perhaps they were about to demonstrate something far more interesting than mere strength. Redefining strength. The trial chamber aboard the Invincible Might was a cathedral to raw power. Walls of living metal pulsed with energy, while the floor could reconfigure itself into any challenge imaginable. In the observation gallery, representatives from 24 spacefaring species watched with varying degrees of interest and pity. Dr. Chen stood calmly in the center of the chamber, wearing what appeared to be little more than a slim bodysuit threaded with iridescent lines. Beside her, the Kralaxian champion, Kravtor, loomed like a living weapon. His 4 arms bristled with biomechanical augments, each limb capable of crushing steel. "The first trial," High Admiral Zexthar's voice boomed from above, "tests pure lifting strength. Before you stands a gravitically enhanced mass. It weighs equivalent to one of your Earth tanks. Lift it above your head. Kravtor will demonstrate." The Kralaxian champion approached the metallic cube. His augments hummed with power as he grasped it, muscles bulging as he hoisted the massive weight overhead with a roar of triumph. The crowd cheered appreciatively. "Your turn, human," Crabtree sneered, dropping the cube with a thunderous crash. "Try not to strain anything vital." Chen approached the cube, studying it with analytical precision. "Interesting design," she murmured, running her fingers along its surface. "The gravitic field is internally generated, creating artificial mass without corresponding density. Clever." "Less analysis, more lifting," Crafter demanded. "Oh, of course." Chen smiled. Her fingers traced a specific pattern on the cube's surface. "But you see, any system that generates artificial mass requires a control mechanism. And control mechanisms," there was a subtle click, "can be adjusted." The cube lifted effortlessly as Chen raised one hand, floating up as if it weighed nothing. The chamber fell silent. "That's cheating," Kravtor bellowed. "She's disabled the gravity field." "Actually," Chen replied, her voice perfectly calm, "I simply optimized it. The rules stated we must lift the weight. They didn't specify how." She gestured, and the cube began orbiting her like a satellite. "Though if you prefer." Her bodysuit shimmed, threads of light racing across its surface. With one smooth motion, she plucked the cube from the air and lifted it overhead, matching Crafter's earlier feat. "I can do it your way too. I just choose not to waste energy unnecessarily." In the observation gallery, Venera leaned forward, fascination overriding her professional detachment. "Admiral," she whispered, "the human suit. It's not just fabric. It's a neural interface web, redirecting and amplifying her natural bioelectric field." "The second trial," Zexthar announced, his voice tight with anger, "tests combat prowess. Defeat the battle drones." A dozen combat machines materialized in the chamber, their weapons primed. Crafter charged into them like a living battering ram, his augmented limbs tearing through metal and circuitry in an awesome display of destructive power. Chen took a different approach. As the drones surrounded her, her movements became liquid grace. Each step, each gesture was precisely calculated. The iridescent threads in her suit pulsed in sync with her nervous system. "Their targeting systems rely on predicted movement patterns," she explained, almost conversationally, as she wove between plasma bolts. "If you move efficiently enough." A drone fired, only to hit another drone as Chen smoothly sidestepped. They defeat themselves. One by one, the drones fell, destroyed by their own crossfire, or simply shutting down as Chen touched specific points on their chassis. She never threw a single punch. "This is not combat," Kravtor protested. "Where is the strength? The power?" "Strength isn't just about destruction," Chen replied, powering down the last drone with a precise tap. "It's about understanding and adapting. Your augments make you powerful, but they limit you to one type of response." She gestured at the fallen drones. "Sometimes the strongest approach is to let your opponent's strength work against them." In the gallery, alien observers were frantically taking notes. This was not the demonstration of human weakness they had expected. Instead, they were witnessing something far more intriguing: the strength of efficiency over raw power. "The final trial," Zexthar declared, his voice now carrying a hint of uncertainty, "tests endurance. You will both enter the stress chamber. Environmental conditions will become increasingly hostile. The last one standing wins." Chen nodded, but her attention was on her suit's readouts. "Before we begin, I have a question about the chamber's atmospheric processors. Are they similar to the ones that maintain this ship's life support?" "What does that matter?" Kravtor demanded. "Oh, nothing really. Just curious about their efficiency ratings." Chen's smile had an edge of satisfaction. "Shall we begin?" As they stepped into the stress chamber, Venera suddenly realized why Chen had asked about the processors. But before she could voice her concern, the final trial had begun, and with it, a demonstration of strength that would change the galaxy's understanding of power forever. The final trial. The stress chamber was a perfect cube of gleaming metal, designed to push any being to their absolute limits. As Chen and Crafter took their positions, the chamber's systems hummed to life. "Beginning environmental stress test," announced an automated voice. Phase 1. Increasing gravity. The gravity doubled, then tripled. Crafter stood proud, his augmented frame easily handling the pressure. Chen's suit pulsed with increasing frequency, the neural web redistributing the gravitational load across her entire body. "Interesting approach," Chen commented, her breathing steady. "Though increasing gravity requires your life support systems to work harder to maintain atmospheric pressure. Rather inefficient." "Save your breath, human," Crafter growled. "You'll need it." Phase 2. Thermal variance. The temperature plummeted. Frost crystallized on the walls. Crafter's augments whirred louder, generating heat to compensate. Chen's suit shifted color slightly, its surface restructuring to improve thermal retention. "Your augment's power consumption must be enormous," Chen observed. "All that heat generation, fighting against the cold. My suit just needs to retain existing body heat." The temperature suddenly reversed, soaring to nearly unbearable levels. Sweat poured down Crafter's face as his augment struggled to cool his massive frame. Chen remained composed, her suit now reflecting excess heat while maximizing evaporative cooling. Phase 3. Atmospheric adjustment. The air grew thin. Crafter's breathing became labored, his augments working overtime to process the limited oxygen more efficiently. Chen's movements became even more precise, minimizing energy expenditure. "Did you know," she said, her voice still remarkably calm, "that human cells can temporarily adapt to low oxygen environments? We call it metabolic efficiency. No mechanical augmentation required." In the observation gallery, Venra's eyes widened as she studied her readings. "Admiral," she called out, "the human's neural interface. It's not just managing her movements. It's optimizing her entire biological system." "Impossible," Zexthar muttered. "No unaugmented being could maintain such control." Phase 4. Maximum stress test. All environmental factors intensified simultaneously. Gravity crushed down, temperature fluctuated wildly, and the atmosphere became a thin soup of barely breathable gases. Crafter's augments began to whine from the strain. Warnings flashed across his neural displays as power consumption reached critical levels. Yet Chen stood firm, her suit's iridescent patterns flowing like liquid light. "Your augments are impressive," Chen said, taking a careful step forward. "But they're fighting against the environment, burning through power to maintain your strength. My systems work with it instead, adapting and redirecting rather than resisting." Silence. Crafter roared, but his voice was strained. "This is about strength, not efficiency." "But that's where you're wrong," Chen replied. "True strength isn't about how hard you can push against the universe. It's about understanding how to work with it." Crafter's augment suddenly sparked, overloaded by the competing demands. He stumbled, dropping to one knee. Warning klaxons blared as his systems began to fail. "Emergency shutdown required," his augment's eye announced. "Critical system failure imminent." "No," he growled, trying to force himself back up. "I will not be defeated by someone who understood your technology better than you did." Chen finished. She walked over to the chamber's control panel, her movements still precise despite the crushing conditions. "Here's the interesting thing about your atmospheric processors. They're actually quite similar to your augments. All brute force, no finesse." Her fingers danced across the panel. Suddenly, the environmental stresses began to ease. The gravity normalized, the temperature stabilized, and fresh air flowed into the chamber. "How?" Crafter gasped. "I didn't overpower the system," Chen explained. "I synchronized with its operational frequency and guided it back to baseline, just like I've been doing with my own body this entire time." She offered him a hand up. "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is work smarter, not harder." In the observation gallery, Stunned silence gave way to murmurs of astonishment. Venra's data pad was practically overflowing with readings and observations. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I believe we may have significantly underestimated human capabilities." Zexthar stood rigid, his metallic teeth grinding. The human hadn't just survived the trials. She had systematically dismantled every assumption the Kralaxian Empire had about strength, and she had done it without once relying on brute force. As medical teams rushed to tend to Kravder's overloaded augments, Chen calmly began running diagnostics on her suit. "I would be happy to share some insights about improving your augmentation efficiency," she offered. "After all, true strength lies in growing stronger together, doesn't it?" The implications of her victory were already rippling through the gathered audience. Representatives from a dozen worlds were furiously taking notes or sending urgent messages back to their governments. This wasn't just a defeat of Kralaxian might. It was a revolution in how the galaxy understood power itself. A new understanding. 3 months after the trial of might, the Grand Conference Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with unprecedented activity. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to witness something that would have been unthinkable before. A Kralaxian High Admiral requesting to address the assembly alongside a human scientist. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the podium beside High Admiral Zexthar, her neural interface suit now adorned with subtle modifications that reflected both human and Kralaxian design philosophies. The audience included not just politicians and military leaders, but engineers, scientists, and medical professionals from across known space. The trial of might was intended to prove humanity's weakness. Zexthar began, his voice carrying a new note of humility. Instead, it revealed our own. For 10,000 years, the Kralaxian Empire defined strength through a single lens: the ability to overpower, to dominate, to force our will upon the universe itself. He gestured to Chen. Dr. Chen showed us not just the limitations of that view, but the possibilities that lie beyond it. In 3 months of collaboration, her insights have already revolutionized our augmentation technology. Our warriors are stronger than ever, not through greater power, but through greater efficiency. Chen stepped forward. "The greatest strength of any species," she said, "isn't in our muscles or our machines, but in our ability to adapt and learn from each other." The neural interface technology I used during the trials was just the beginning. By combining human biomechanical efficiency with Kralaxian engineering, we've created something entirely new. Displays around the hall activated, showing schematics for new medical technologies, environmental systems, and augmentation designs. Each one represented a fusion of human ingenuity and Kralaxian power, efficiency married to strength. In the audience, Admiral Martinez smiled as she watched her former champion become something more, a bridge between worlds. The Kralaxian Empire, once feared as brutal conquerors, was transforming into a center of technological and biological innovation. Perhaps the most significant discovery, Chen continued, wasn't technological at all. It was the recognition that true strength comes in many forms. The ability to adapt, to think differently, to work with rather than against. These are forms of strength just as valid as physical power. Venra, now head of the newly formed Collaborative Research Division, stood to address the council. The implications extend far beyond military applications. Our medical technology, our environmental systems, even our basic understanding of biology, all are being revolutionized by this new perspective on strength and efficiency. The changes were already visible. Throughout the council chamber, beings of all species wore subtle neural interfaces based on Chen's designs. Kralaxian warriors stood guard wearing streamlined augments that hummed almost silently, consuming a fraction of their former power while providing even greater capability. But perhaps, Zexthar concluded, the greatest strength we've discovered is the ability to admit when we were wrong and to grow stronger by learning from those we once thought weak. As the council chamber erupted in applause, Chen's neural interface picked up an incoming message from Earth. Admiral Martinez's voice came through clearly, ready to tell them about Phase 2. Chen smiled. Phase 2. The adaptation of their combined technologies for space exploration and colonization. The Kralaxians' raw power combined with human efficiency could push the boundaries of possible settlement far beyond what either species could achieve alone. The galaxy once saw strength as the ability to stand alone. Chen addressed the Council one final time. But true strength lies in standing together, each contributing our unique capabilities to create something greater than ourselves. In the years that followed, the Trial of Might became a symbol of transformation rather than domination. The annual competition was redesigned, celebrating innovation and efficiency alongside raw power. Species that had once lived in fear of Kralaxian might now saw them as partners in progress. And in her lab aboard the new Joint Research Station, Adaptive Strength, Dr. Chen continued to push the boundaries of what was possible. Her wall displayed the worn nameplate from her old Earth laboratory. Beneath it, a simple quote: "The strongest force in the universe is not the one that pushes hardest, but the one that adapts best." The Kralaxian Empire had sought to teach humanity a lesson about strength. Instead, they had learned that the greatest power often comes not from domination, but from the wisdom to recognize strength in all its forms. As Chen watched ships of all species dock at the station, their crews wearing technology that bridged the gap between power and efficiency, she reflected that perhaps this had been the real trial all along. Not a test of strength, but a test of the wisdom to recognize when strength needs to be redefined. High above Earth, where it had all began, the Invincible Might still patrolled. But now its crew included humans working alongside Kralaxians, each learning from the other, each growing stronger together. And in the ship's main hall, where portraits of great warriors once hung, a new image had pride of place. A small human woman standing calm and steady in a chamber of chaos, proving that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in the power to change the universe, but in the wisdom to work with it.